Imran Khan will be the Prime Minister of Pakistan. The billionaire's fork hovered mid-air, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. What are you talking about? Who are you? Before Alex could answer, the woman from the alley entered the room, her face twisting in rage. What is this nonsense? Get him out of here, she demanded, signaling to the staff. But Alex didn't back down. He looked directly at the billionaire, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. I heard her. She gave the chef something to put in your food. Please, don't eat it. The room erupted in chaos. Some diners rose from their seats, others pulled out their phones to record the scene. The billionaire hesitated, his gaze shifting between Alex and the woman, who now looked pale and frantic. Don't listen to him, she shouted. He's just a street kid trying to cause trouble. But Alex didn't falter. Check the food, he insisted. Or ask the chef. He knows. The billionaire's eyes hardened. Bring me the chef, he ordered, his voice cutting through the noise. The staff scrambled to obey, and within moments, the chef was dragged into the dining room, his face ashen. Under the intense scrutiny of the crowd, he broke down, confessing everything. As the woman was escorted out in handcuffs, Alex felt his legs give out. The adrenaline that had kept him going drained away, leaving him trembling. The billionaire knelt beside him, his expression softening. You saved my life, he said quietly. What's your name, kid? Alex, he whispered, barely able to meet the man's eyes. Well, Alex, the billionaire said, helping him to his feet, you just changed everything. The warmth of the restaurant felt like a distant memory as Alex sat in the back of a police car, staring at his hands. His clothes were still damp from the rain, but he barely noticed. The events of the night replayed in his mind like a fever dream. One moment, he was a forgotten boy trying to scavenge a meal, and the next, he was being thanked by a billionaire whose life he had just saved. The sharp contrast of his world with the opulence he'd stepped into left him feeling dizzy. The officer sitting in the driver's seat glanced back at Alex through the rearview mirror. You okay, kid? You're a hero, you know. Alex didn't respond. He didn't feel like a hero. The word felt too big, too foreign for someone like him. He had acted on instinct, driven by the desperate need to stop something terrible. Now that it was over, the weight of what he'd done was settling in. The car stopped outside the precinct. Alex was led inside, his wet sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. The officers were kind but brisk, taking down his statement and asking him to recount what he'd heard and seen. He told them everything, the argument in the alley, the vial, the chef's hesitance. Each detail spilled out in a monotone voice, as if he were describing someone else's story. Once the questioning ended, Alex expected to be sent back to the streets. He had grown used to being shuffled around, passed off as someone else's problem. But instead, the door to the room opened, and in walked the man he'd saved, Mr. Dawson. Dawson's presence was overwhelming. He carried himself with the confidence of someone used to commanding attention. His tailored suit was immaculate, his sharp features softened only slightly by the exhaustion in his eyes. He sat down across from Alex, his expression unreadable. You're Alex, right? Dawson asked, his voice calm but firm. Alex nodded, unsure what to say. I've been thinking about you all night, Dawson continued. About how you stepped into that restaurant and risked everything to warn me. Why? The question caught Alex off guard. He hadn't thought about the why. It had seemed so obvious in the moment. Because I heard her, Alex said simply. She wanted to hurt you, and no one else knew. I couldn't walk away. Dawson studied him for a long moment. His gaze wasn't cold or dismissive, the way Alex was used to. Instead, it felt like the man was trying to piece him together, as if Alex were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Where are your parents? Dawson asked. Alex shifted uncomfortably. He hated this question. They're gone, he said shortly. Do you have anyone? Family? Friends? Alex shook his head. It's just me. The room grew quiet. Dawson leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. You're just a kid, he said, almost to himself. A kid who had no reason to care what happened to me, and yet here we are. Before Alex could respond, the door opened again. One of the officers stepped inside, a folder in his hands. Mr. Dawson, the officer said, addressing the billionaire, we've confirmed everything. The vial contained a potent poison. The chef and Mrs. Dawson are in custody, and the case is airtight. Dawson nodded, his jaw tightening at the mention of his wife. He turned back to Alex. Do you have anywhere to go tonight? Alex blinked, surprised by the question. I'm fine, he mumbled. I'll figure something out. Dawson frowned. That's not an answer. He stood, his imposing frame casting a shadow over the room. Come with me. Alex hesitated. He wasn't used to people offering help, especially not someone like Dawson. But something in the man's tone left no room for argument. Alex followed him out of the station and into a sleek black car waiting outside. The ride was silent, the city lights flashing past the windows. Alex couldn't help but feel out of place, sitting in the plush leather seat of a car that probably cost more than he could imagine. He glanced at Dawson, who stared straight ahead, lost in thought. Eventually, the car pulled up to a towering building with a doorman waiting outside. Alex's eyes widened as he took in the marble entryway and the glittering chandeliers visible through the windows. He had never seen anything like it. Inside, the warmth and luxury were almost suffocating. The floors gleamed, and the air smelled faintly of expensive cologne. Dawson led Alex to an elevator, and they rode up in silence until the doors opened to a sprawling penthouse. Make yourself at home, Dawson said, his voice betraying a hint of awkwardness. Alex didn't move. The penthouse felt like another world, too clean and perfect for someone like him to exist in. He stood by the door, clutching the strap of his worn backpack. Dawson sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I don't know what happens next, he admitted. But you saved my life, and I'm not going to let you go back to the streets. You can stay here for now. We'll figure something out. Alex finally stepped inside, his movements hesitant. The room was filled with things he didn't understand, artwork that looked like it belonged in a museum, furniture that was more about appearance than comfort. But what caught his attention was the view. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the light stretching out as far as he could see. For the first time in years, Alex felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't comfort or security, not yet. But it was a start. As he stood there, Dawson watched him quietly. The billionaire couldn't shake the feeling that their meeting had been more than a coincidence. This boy, who had nothing to his name, had changed the course of his life in a single night. Neither of them knew what the future held, but one thing was clear, their lives were now intertwined in ways neither could have imagined. The next morning, Alex woke to the unfamiliar sensation of warmth and security. For the first time in years, he wasn't jolted awake by the chill of the streets or the sound of sirens echoing in the distance. Instead, he found himself wrapped in soft blankets on a bed so large it felt like it could swallow him whole. He blinked at the sunlight streaming through the massive windows, momentarily disoriented. He sat up, his gaze sweeping the room. It was unlike anything he had ever seen: sleek furniture, thick carpets, and a view that seemed to stretch endlessly over the city skyline. Alex felt out of place, a scrappy kid surrounded by luxury. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him that the last thing he'd eaten was a stale piece of bread 2 days ago. Tentatively, Alex stepped out of the room. He wandered through the penthouse, his bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. The place was eerily quiet, its vastness amplifying the sound of his own breathing. He found the kitchen, a space so polished it seemed more like a showroom than a place where meals were made. He hesitated, unsure if he was even allowed to be here, until a voice startled him. "Hungry?" Alex turned to see Mr. Dawson leaning against the doorway, holding a mug of coffee. The billionaire looked different in casual clothes, less intimidating, almost approachable. Alex nodded but didn't say anything, his eyes darting toward the fridge. Dawson chuckled, setting his coffee down. "Help yourself. Eat whatever you want." Alex hesitated, then cautiously opened the fridge. It was packed with more food than he had seen in months: fresh fruit, neatly packaged leftovers, and rows of drinks. He grabbed a sandwich, barely able to wait until he unwrapped it before taking a bite. As Alex ate, Dawson watched him silently, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "I've been thinking about what you did last night. You didn't just save my life, you changed it. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if you hadn't spoken up." Alex swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. He wasn't used to gratitude, especially not from someone like Dawson. "Do you know who she was?" Dawson continued, his tone heavier now. "The woman who tried to poison me?" Alex nodded slowly. "Your wife. I heard the chef call her Mrs. Dawson." The billionaire's jaw tightened. "Ex-wife," he corrected. "Or at least she will be soon. I knew our marriage was falling apart, but I didn't think she'd go to such extremes. And you," he paused, his voice softening. "You had no reason to help me, yet you did. That says something about you, Alex." Alex shrugged, looking away. It was just the right thing to do. Dawson studied him for a moment before speaking again. "I want to help you, Alex. I don't know what your life's been like, but it's clear you've had it rough. You don't have to live like that anymore, not if I can do something about it." Alex's chest tightened. The offer sounded too good to be true. He had learned long ago that kindness often came with strings attached. "Why would you do that?" he asked cautiously. "Because I owe you," Dawson said simply. "And because everyone deserves a chance to start over." The sincerity in Dawson's voice caught Alex off guard. He wanted to believe him, but the years of disappointment and broken promises made it hard. Over the next few days, Alex began to settle into a routine. Dawson had set up a guest room for him, filled with clothes that actually fit and essentials Alex had never owned before. It felt strange, like stepping into someone else's life. Despite his initial hesitation, Alex started to let his guard down. Dawson, for his part, was patient. He didn't push Alex to talk about his past, but he made it clear that he was there to listen if Alex ever wanted to open up. Instead, he focused on introducing Alex to a new way of living. He took Alex to see a doctor for a full checkup, enrolled him in online classes to catch up on school, and even hired a tutor to help him adjust. But adjusting wasn't easy. Alex struggled to shake the survival instincts he had developed on the streets. He still pocketed extra food from the fridge, hiding it in his room in case it was taken away. He avoided eye contact with strangers, flinching whenever someone raised their voice, even if it wasn't directed at him. Dawson noticed these behaviors but didn't comment on them directly. Instead, he found subtle ways to reassure Alex, leaving snacks out where he could easily see them, speaking in calm tones, and giving him space to feel safe. As the days turned into weeks, Alex began to trust Dawson more. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching TV, Alex finally opened up. "I used to have a family," he said quietly, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Mom, Dad, a little sister. We were happy, I think. At least, I was. But then there was a car accident. My mom and sister didn't make it. My dad, he couldn't handle it. He started drinking. A lot." Dawson listened silently, his heart aching for the boy. One day, he just left, Alex continued, his voice trembling. Said he couldn't take it anymore. I waited for him to come back, but he never did. After that, it was just me. Dawson placed a hand on Alex's shoulder, his grip firm but gentle. I'm sorry, Alex. No one should have to go through that, especially not a kid. Alex shrugged, wiping his eyes. It is what it is. I've been on my own for so long, I don't even remember what it's like to have someone care. Well, you're not alone anymore, Dawson said firmly. Not as long as I'm around. Alex didn't respond, but for the first time, he allowed himself to believe it might be true. As the weeks went by, Alex's life began to change in ways he never imagined. He discovered a love for reading, devouring books from Dawson's extensive library. He started to excel in his online classes, surprising even himself with how quickly he picked up new skills. But the most significant change was the bond he formed with Dawson. What had started as an uneasy truce grew into something deeper, a connection neither of them had expected. Dawson, who had always been focused on business and success, found himself caring for Alex in a way that felt profoundly personal. And Alex, who had spent years keeping everyone at arm's length, began to see Dawson as more than just a benefactor. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks along the way. But as Alex stood on the balcony one evening, looking out at the city that had once felt so hostile, he realized something had shifted. For the first time in years, he felt like he belonged. Like he had a chance at a future worth fighting for. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about trust, family, and what it meant to truly start over. The morning light filtered through the expansive windows of the penthouse, casting a warm glow across the room. Alex sat at the breakfast bar, slowly chewing on a piece of toast as Dawson read the news on his tablet. It was a quiet moment, one of many they had begun to share. Alex still found it strange, this new routine, the feeling of stability he hadn't experienced in years. He was beginning to learn that calm didn't have to mean emptiness. Alex, Dawson said, breaking the silence. He set the tablet down and folded his hands on the counter. I've been thinking about something. Alex looked up warily. Conversations that started this way usually led to things being taken away. What? He asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. I've been speaking with some people I trust, Dawson began, his voice measured. About how to help you long term. I think it's time we start looking into formalizing things, like getting you an official guardian. Someone who can make sure you're taken care of. The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. His immediate thought was that Dawson wanted to get rid of him. You're sending me away? He asked, his voice sharp with fear. No, that's not what I mean, Dawson said quickly. He stood and moved closer, leaning on the counter to meet Alex's eyes. I'm not sending you anywhere. I want to be that guardian. I want to make this arrangement permanent. Alex stared at him, his mind racing. He wasn't sure if he'd heard correctly. You want to keep me? Dawson smiled softly. You're not some stray dog, Alex. Of course, I want to keep you. You're part of my life now, whether you like it or not. For a moment, Alex didn't know how to respond. The idea of someone wanting him, not out of obligation, but because they chose to, was so foreign it felt almost unreal. Why would you do that? He asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I see potential in you, Dawson said. Because I see someone who's been through hell and still has the courage to do the right thing. And because, frankly, you remind me of myself at your age. Alex frowned. You? How? Dawson chuckled, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. Believe it or not, I didn't grow up with all this, he said, gesturing around the penthouse. I came from a small town. My parents worked hard, but we didn't have much. I had to fight for everything I have now. I know what it's like to feel like the odds are stacked against you. The admission caught Alex off guard. He had always assumed Dawson's life had been one of privilege and ease. Hearing otherwise made him see the man in a new light. Okay, Alex said after a long pause. What do we do next? Dawson smiled, relieved. First, we'll start the legal process. It might take some time, but I'll handle the paperwork. In the meantime, we'll keep building on what we've started here. True to his word, Dawson dove into the process of becoming Alex's legal guardian. The paperwork was extensive, requiring meetings with lawyers and social workers, but Dawson approached it with the same determination he brought to his business ventures. Alex was surprised by how much effort the man was willing to put in. As the weeks passed, Alex found himself adjusting more to his new life. He still struggled with trust, but Dawson's consistency helped. He was always there, whether it was to help Alex with schoolwork, cook dinner together, or simply sit and watch TV. One evening, as they were cleaning up after dinner, Alex decided to take a leap of faith. "There's something I want to do," he said hesitantly. "What's that?" Dawson asked, drying a dish. "I want to find my dad," Alex admitted. The words felt heavy, like they'd been trapped inside him for too long. "I know he left, but I need to know why. I need to know if he's still out there." Dawson set the dish down and turned to Alex, his expression serious. "Are you sure about this? It might not give you the closure you're looking for." "I have to try," Alex said firmly. "Even if it doesn't change anything, I need to know." Dawson nodded. "Okay. Then we'll do it together." The search for Alex's father was a challenging and emotional journey. Dawson hired a private investigator to track down any leads, but information was scarce. Days turned into weeks, and Alex began to lose hope. But Dawson refused to give up. Finally, they got a breakthrough. The investigator found a man matching Alex's father's description living in a small town a few hours away. Alex's heart raced as he stared at the report. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what they might find, but he knew he had to go. Dawson drove them to the town, the tension in the car thick enough to cut with a knife. Alex fidgeted with the hem of his shirt, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. When they finally arrived at a rundown house on the outskirts of town, Alex felt like he might be sick. "Take your time," Dawson said gently. "I'll be right here." Alex nodded and stepped out of the car. His legs felt like lead as he approached the door. He hesitated for a moment before knocking. The door creaked open, revealing a man who looked older than his years. His face was lined with regret, his eyes tired and haunted. He stared at Alex, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. "Alex," the man said, his voice trembling. Alex nodded, his throat too tight to speak. The man stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in," he said. "Please." Inside, the house was small and cluttered, but it felt lived in. The man motioned for Alex to sit, his hands shaking. "I never thought I'd see you again," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Why did you leave?" Alex blurted out. The question had been burning inside him for years, and now that he had the chance to ask, he couldn't hold it back. The man sighed, rubbing his face. "I was a coward," he admitted. "After the accident, I didn't know how to handle it. I was drowning in guilt and grief, and I thought you'd be better off without me. I see now that I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Alex. I failed you." The apology hit Alex like a wave. He had spent years imagining this moment, thinking of all the things he would say. But now, sitting here face to face with his father, all he felt was a deep, aching sadness. "I just wanted to know," Alex said quietly. "I needed to understand." They talked for hours, sharing stories and memories. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was a start. By the time Alex and Dawson left, Alex felt lighter, as if a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had been lifted. Back in the car, Dawson glanced at Alex. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Tired," Alex admitted. "But, better. Thank you for coming with me." "Always," Dawson said with a small smile. As they drove back to the city, Alex realized something important. He might never have all the answers or fix everything that had gone wrong in his past, but he didn't have to face it alone. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was heading toward a future filled with possibility. And that was enough. The weeks following Alex's visit to his father were transformative. Though the encounter had been emotionally taxing, it had provided a sense of closure he hadn't known he needed. The unanswered questions about his past, while still painful, no longer weighed on him as heavily. He could finally focus on the present and the future, a shift that Dawson noticed with quiet pride. Alex dove headfirst into the opportunities now available to him. With Dawson's encouragement, he began exploring hobbies and activities he had never thought were within his reach. Reading, which had started as a distraction, became a passion. Dawson often found Alex curled up in the library, engrossed in a book about history or science fiction. The boy's curiosity seemed boundless, and Dawson was more than happy to nurture it. One evening, as they sat together discussing Alex's latest read, Dawson broached a subject he had been considering for some time. "Alex," he began, setting his coffee mug down. "Have you ever thought about what you want to do when you're older? What kind of career you might like?" The question caught Alex off guard. He had spent so many years in survival mode that the idea of a long-term future felt almost foreign. "I don't know," he admitted. "I never thought I'd get to have a future like that." "Well, you do now," Dawson said firmly. "And I think it's time we start planning for it. You're smart, resourceful, and you've got a good heart. The world's open to you." The idea was daunting, but it also filled Alex with a sense of hope. Over the next few days, he and Dawson talked extensively about his interests and potential paths he could take. Alex discovered that he had a knack for problem-solving and a deep interest in technology. Dawson suggested they visit a tech expo happening in the city that weekend, and Alex eagerly agreed. The expo was a dazzling display of innovation, filled with cutting-edge gadgets and presentations from some of the brightest minds in the industry. Alex was like a kid in a candy store, moving from booth to booth with wide-eyed excitement. Dawson hung back, watching with a smile as Alex peppered the exhibitors with questions and absorbed their answers like a sponge. At one booth, Alex struck up a conversation with a young entrepreneur demonstrating a prototype for an app designed to connect underprivileged youth with educational resources. The idea resonated deeply with Alex, who could see how such a tool might have changed his own life. By the end of the conversation, he was brimming with ideas of his own, sketching out concepts on a notepad Dawson had bought him at the event. On the way home, Alex was unusually quiet, staring out the car window as the city lights blurred past. "Dawson," he said finally, "do you think I could do something like that? Create something that helps people?" "Without a doubt," Dawson replied. "You've got the passion and the drive. All you need is the knowledge, and I'll make sure you get access to it." True to his word, Dawson began setting up opportunities for Alex to explore his interest in technology. He arranged for Alex to meet with mentors, attend workshops, and even enroll in a coding class at a nearby community center. Alex threw himself into these new experiences, working harder than he ever had. For the first time, he felt like he was building something that could make a difference. Meanwhile, Dawson continued to navigate the process of becoming Alex's legal guardian. The paperwork was grueling, but he never wavered in his commitment. His determination inspired Alex, who began to see Dawson not just as a benefactor but as family. It was a relationship built on mutual respect and trust, something Alex had never experienced before. As Alex grew more confident, he started to open up about his experiences on the streets. He shared stories of the people he had met, some kind, others cruel, and the lessons he had learned along the way. Dawson listened intently, often struck by the resilience and wisdom Alex displayed. It was clear that the boy's difficult past had shaped him into someone extraordinary. One day, as they were sorting through old photos Dawson had pulled from storage, Alex came across a picture of a younger Dawson standing with a group of children. "Who are they?" Alex asked, holding up the photo. Dawson's expression softened. "That was a summer camp I used to volunteer at," he explained. "It was for kids from underprivileged backgrounds. I always felt like I got more out of it than they did." Alex studied the photo, a thought forming in his mind. "Do you think we could do something like that? Maybe start a program for kids who don't have anyone to help them?" Dawson's eyes lit up. "That's a brilliant idea, Alex. We could start small, maybe partner with a local community center. And you could be involved every step of the way." The idea took root quickly. Over the next few weeks, Alex and Dawson began brainstorming ways to bring their vision to life. They decided to call the initiative Second Chance, a name that reflected both Alex's journey and the opportunities they hoped to provide for others. Dawson reached out to his network, securing funding and support, while Alex worked on designing the program from a participant's perspective. The launch event for Second Chance was a modest affair, held at the same community center where Alex had taken his first coding class. Dozens of kids showed up, along with their families, eager to learn about the program. Alex stood at the front of the room, nervously clutching a microphone as he prepared to share his story. "Hi, everyone," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "My name's Alex, and I used to be like some of you, wondering if there was a way out, if life could be better. I'm here to tell you that it can. You just need someone to believe in you. For me, that person was Mr. Dawson. And now, we want to be those people for you." The applause that followed was thunderous, and Alex felt a warmth spread through him. For the first time, he truly understood the power of his story, the way it could inspire others to believe in themselves. As the event wrapped up, Alex and Dawson stood together, watching the kids explore the activities and resources they had worked so hard to provide. "This is just the beginning," Dawson said, clapping a hand on Alex's shoulder. Alex nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. For the first time in his life, he felt not just hopeful but certain that the future was bright. And he couldn't wait to see what came next. Alex's transformation became a source of inspiration for the entire city. What had started as an act of desperation turned into a story that people couldn't stop talking about. The boy who had once been invisible on the streets was now seen as a beacon of courage and resilience. His brave decision to intervene that night had not only saved a life but had also sparked change in ways no one could have anticipated. Mr. Dawson, once viewed as an aloof billionaire consumed by his work, found himself re-evaluating his priorities. He was overwhelmed by guilt when he realized how close he had come to dismissing Alex, not just that night in the restaurant, but in a broader sense, how he, like many others, had ignored the plight of people like Alex for years. He made a public statement soon after the incident, expressing his gratitude to the boy who had saved his life. But he didn't stop at words. Dawson pledged to use his wealth and influence to address the systemic issues that left children like Alex to fend for themselves. The first step was establishing a foundation in Alex's honor, focusing on supporting homeless youth with food, shelter, and education. Alex was reluctant to step into the spotlight at first, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. But with Dawson's encouragement, he embraced his new role, becoming the face of the foundation. He shared his story at events, urging people to see the potential in those who society often overlooked. Cassandra's arrest and the scandal surrounding her actions sent shockwaves through the community. People questioned how someone could harbor such malice, but it also led to a broader conversation about trust, relationships, and the lengths people could go to for greed or revenge. Dawson, though betrayed, found himself feeling more pity than anger. "Bitterness will only hold me back," he said during a press conference. His decision to forgive Cassandra publicly became a turning point, shifting the narrative from one of vengeance to one of healing. Meanwhile, Alex had his own journey of healing to undertake. Though his life had changed dramatically, the scars of his past didn't vanish overnight. Dawson arranged therapy for him, and Alex began to confront the loss of his family and the years he had spent surviving alone. These sessions revealed his resilience and his capacity to hope even in the darkest times. He started to believe that his future could be brighter than his past. As Alex adjusted to his new life, he formed unexpected connections with people he once thought were out of his reach. Dawson treated him like family, offering guidance and a stable home. He also introduced Alex to mentors who helped him navigate his education and develop his talents. Alex discovered a passion for storytelling and began writing about his experiences. His essays and short stories, filled with raw emotion and hard-earned wisdom, caught the attention of local publishers. Soon, he was sharing his journey with a broader audience, encouraging others to find their voice. The community's response to Alex's story was profound. People began organizing donation drives and volunteer programs to support the foundation. Schools started incorporating lessons on empathy and community service, using Alex's story as an example of how one act of courage could ripple outward to create significant change. Local businesses partnered with Dawson's foundation to provide job training and opportunities for those in need. The ripple effect didn't stop there. Alex's story gained national attention, sparking debates about how society treated its most vulnerable members. Politicians, inspired by the grassroots efforts in the city, introduced policies aimed at tackling homelessness and improving social safety nets. Dawson used his influence to lobby for these changes, while Alex became an advocate, speaking directly to lawmakers and communities about his experiences. But the most profound transformation was in the boy himself. Alex, who once believed he was destined to remain unseen and unheard, had found his purpose. He no longer lived in fear of being forgotten. Instead, he stood tall as a symbol of hope and resilience. He often said, "If I could speak up when it mattered most, anyone can." It's not about where you start, it's about what you're willing to fight for. As the years passed, Alex's influence only grew. His foundation expanded to other cities, his writing reached more readers, and his speeches continued to inspire. But he never forgot where he came from. Every year, on the anniversary of the night he saved Mr. Dawson's life, Alex returned to the streets where his journey began. He spent the evening handing out meals and talking to those who were still waiting for their chance to be seen. The community that once overlooked Alex now looked to him as a leader. The boy who had been defined by his struggles had reshaped his identity through bravery, compassion, and determination. His story became a reminder to everyone that even in the darkest moments, one choice could change everything. And so, Alex's legacy wasn't just about saving a billionaire's life. It was about how that single act of courage transformed not only his own future but the lives of countless others. As his story continued to spread, it left people asking themselves a powerful question: what would you do if you had the chance to change someone's life? Would you take it?